All right, so you got to teach me how to make this go. That sounds really weird standing that close to that. How y'all today?
Good.
Doing good? Thank y'all for being out. My name's Joey, like he said, all that stuff about being an expert. We'll see here in just a minute, won't we? So, we're going to be talking about how to work this remote. Hey, I got to keep watching on. Yes, she is. Just so y'all know, I write about all kinds of different stuff on my blog right here. This is cashflowwithjoe.com. Y'all go sign up for it. It's free. I'll tell you about what classes are coming, not my classes, other people's classes, because I got 4 kids and I teach you classes here. But we've got what classes are coming up, what kind of deals are working really good right now, how I screwed stuff up, and then what I learned how to fix things. So it's a really good resource. It's free. Go check it out. There we go. All right. So my goal today with Lease Options is hopefully to give you some confidence on how to do these things and do them well. When we get through this is literally going to be a meat and potatoes type deal. I'm not going to give you any fluff. What we're going to talk about is deals that have really happened, things that we've really learned, and I'm even going to show you one that got screwed jacked. I mean, it just got jacked up by somebody else that came across my desk last week. So hopefully through all this, you'll get some good practices, and you'll also get some good verbiage as to what to put into your actual lease. So I said that this will be a meat and potatoes type thing. If y'all have questions, please stop me and ask me about it. I'm here for y'all right now. I've got an hour and a half with y'all, and I want to make sure that y'all get the benefit out of this because, you know, it's no good if I'm just sitting up here talking and I understand what it is, but y'all don't. So what Yoda always says, understand it or not, ask questions or sure. There we go. I like that. All right, and seriously, y'all, there ain't no dumb question. So if you don't understand it, please ask me more. You know, I'm from Georgia. There are some things that are different in Georgia than there are in Tennessee. And so if it's something that doesn't sound right in Tennessee, please let me know. Ashley Cross will be the exact person that you asked about that. All right, our overview for today, we're going to talk about what a lease option is. We're also going to talk about what it is not. We're going to talk about what kind of documents you need. And we're going to talk about some language that you should have in each. It's easy to get mired up in the details on this, and I actually had a hard time writing this one because leases are not so bad. But options are something that are so big and vast that I'm actually going to push y'all off onto somebody else to be able to go and learn about the different sides of options. But I'm going to bring some straight up excerpts from some of my options so that you can see things that should be in yours if you're doing a lease option strategy. We're going to talk about some of the common misconceptions and pitfalls associated with doing lease options that can wind you up not only losing money, but can get you in court or two. And I'm going to show you a case in which that happened. And then examples of how not to do a lease option. All right, so who here is excited about talking about selling their properties with lease options? All right, we don't do that here. What I mean by that is selling your house with a lease option is an erroneous statement. It's false. Okay? You don't sell your house with a lease option. You're like, what? I'm dead serious. All right. Lease option is not one strategy. It's not one word. Matter of fact, it's 2 words. It's one, a lease, and the other is an option. And you put those 2 things together like thing 1 and thing 2 right here, and all of a sudden you get something really cool. So thing 1 is a lease. There we go. Now what happened? Is a lease option agreement. And then thing 2 is an option agreement. So can anybody define for me? Man, what's up with this thing? Well, it ain't working. I'm not looking at the wrong thing. I'm looking at the wrong thing.
Voice activated.
There you go. Can somebody define for me what a lease is?
This is a contractual or a contract between, a lease is a contract between a tenant and a landlord for the option to use a property or to use something.
Say that one more time.
A lease is a contract between a tenant and a landlord to use something.
Okay. Anybody else got any ideas? Really? All right. How many landlords we got there? I should have some better answers. If not better, but I should have some more answers than that.
Better answers probably.
Okay. So the reason why I'm going to challenge it on it just a little bit is because it doesn't necessarily have to be a landlord. All right. So there's all kinds of different leases out there. In our world, they are residential leases for the most part. Y'all may have some commercial stuff out there, but at least is an agreement that gives somebody the right to use something. Right. The reason why I'm going to leave this ambiguous is because You can lease a car. All right, you're not a landlord, then you're just a car owner, right? You can lease a jet ski. You can lease all kinds of different things. But in our world, it's more than likely going to be some sort of residential property. It could be a commercial property. Now, it could be short term. It's going to be a different type of lease there. It could be long term. It could be pad splits. It could be all kinds of different things. But it gives somebody the right of use. Okay, so that's what a lease does. Next thing is it defines the compensation that the person that is doing the leasing as rent. You might listen and thinking, why does that matter? It will matter, but just promise me, whenever you're doing this, make sure you always refer to the compensation that you're receiving as rent. Next thing is it defines the responsibilities of both parties. Right? When you're looking at a lease, it tells you what the tenant's supposed to do. They got to pay on time. They got to be comfortable to work with. They've got to take care of the house, and they got to be a good neighbor. Those are the 4 things that your leases should all say. Now, we tend to do that in like 10-page documents, but still, that is the breakdown of what it should really say. By the same token, you're going to have the responsibilities of what the landlord is. So the landlord's responsibilities are to do the major repairs on the house. They're supposed to keep the house safe and livable. They're supposed to make sure that collection of rents are possible. And in mine, we do the same thing that our tenants do. By what I mean by that is we're comfortable to work with. We are, I'm going to make advance. We're comfortable to work with. We are have good communication. We don't pay on time, but we collect on time and all those things. So anyway, the whole point of a lease is it defines the promises that are kept, and then it also says what happens if these promises are not kept. All right. So all an agreement is a bunch of promises. You got to make sure you say what it is that you're going to do, and then what happens if you don't do that. It also says when the beginning and the end of the agreement is, but the most important thing, what Colin says, is it establishes a tenant-landlord relationship. I want to harp on that as we go through this, because one of the biggest misconceptions associated with lease options is neglecting that fact right there. When you do a lease option, you are entering into a tenant-landlord relationship, okay? All right. Can anybody define what an option agreement is? That's thing 2. Colin's got it. Anybody else? Somebody else have to talk.
Essentially, just a purchase sale agreement.
Okay. I like that. All right. He said essentially a purchase sale agreement. Anybody got anything else?
With consideration of the property. Doesn't have to.
Boom! Y'all hear that? Say it one more time, Ross. I won't kiss you, I promise. I brushed my teeth too.
Okay.
I'll get closer. Tell me what you got.
The right, but not the obligation to purchase something.
The right, but not the obligation to purchase something. All right. An option agreement is when somebody sells another the right, but not the obligation to purchase something from an agreed upon price sometime in the future. Why does that matter? Yes, sir.
Well, it's a subject to many conditions and it's 18 months, 2 years, so usually. So relationships change.
So I like what he just said. I'm going to go a different route with it. All right. The reason why this is important is because sometimes people confuse the idea of a lease option and a lease purchase. A lease option and a lease purchase are totally different things. Are y'all aware of that? Everybody shake their head. Yes, I'm aware of that now. All right. So a lease option is the right, but not the obligation to be able to purchase something sometime in the future. Whereas a lease purchase obligates both parties to perform. If you enter into a lease purchase situation, somebody's got to buy it, another person's got to sell it, and you can be sued for it otherwise. Okay, so these are big differences. They sound like small differences, but they are big differences whenever you're doing this right. My whole goal with this is to make sure y'all don't get into court. All right, what is in an option agreement? First, we got to name who the people are. So this is important to know too. You need to know who the optionee is. The optionee is the person that has the keys. That's the person that is buying the right to be able to purchase this thing sometime in the future. All right. In our situation, it's going to be our tenant. The optionor is the one who owns the door. This is going to be the person that is selling the option. Now, oftentimes that's going to be the landlord. Sometimes it's not. Once again, I said options can be a little hairy, and so I'm going to push y'all off to somebody for that. All right. The option also defines what option consideration is and how it may be applied. It also says what the option strike price is, which is going to be the purchase price, and then what the terms of the sale are, and any other stipulations. Now, that goes back to what this gentleman said. What's your name? Heath. what he said that an option agreement is nothing more than a purchase and sale agreement. That's almost right. It's vice versa. All purchase and sale agreements are option agreements. Not all option agreements are purchase and sale agreements. Okay? Because you can have the option, the very first option that was ever invented, had to like during Greek times where this dude went around, and he thought that there was a astronomer, something along those lines. And he saw that there was going to be a bumper crop of olives next year based off of looking at all the different stuff. And so he went around and he got an option to rent all the olive presses for a specific price. Then when the bumper crop came in, all the farmers had to come to him in order to be able to use the olive presses, and he made bank off of it because he had a price locked in right here, and he charged them extra. So it's not necessarily a sale, but it is locking in a price on sale. All right. Does anybody have any idea what option consideration is?
Money pay any option.
Is it? Well, money of some sort. What kind of money? We got monopoly money or what?
US dollars.
Maybe. All right. Option consideration is a funny thing. The reason why it's a funny thing is because it can be money. It doesn't have to be money, right? The definition of it is something of value given to purchase the right to buy an option. Uh-oh, I have my wife read this. You're not buying an option or you're just buying an option. All right, it can be cash, but it doesn't have to be cash. I have done things where we've had sweat equity. I've taken things in trade for. I've done all kinds of things as consideration. Matter of fact, I've had my own sweat equity be a consideration for buying an option before. And so options are something that as investors, you can both buy and sell. And so today we're strictly going to be talking about selling options to our tenants. We're not going to do the other side. I got to head myself on that. All right. It can be all cash. It doesn't have to be, but option consideration is non-refundable. Anybody tell me why?
Option's already been purchased.
You feel it?
An option, an option.
I mean, what would be the point of offering the option if, like, they don't lose anything, they don't give us anything in return for the option?
Let's take it a different route. What if you're the one buying the option?
I think it's like the same thing, like, in order to have the option, like, that gives you the opportunity to do something, but like the person given the option locks them in to doing something, so they need to have something in return that's not refundable. Yes, again.
So I like the idea of locking somebody in. So whenever I do contracts with people, I'm not sitting there trying to make them do something. If I'm trying to make them do something, I'm forcing a deal. And it's been my experience that if you force a deal, somebody's not going to be happy with that. I like win-win deals. All right. So the reason why option consideration, in my opinion, is not refundable is because when you give up a right, you should be compensated for it. All right. And you don't know what's about to happen with that. So I'll give you a case in point. I sold somebody an option in 2020 for a property that we have. And in 2020, were property values high or low? They were low, right? Right. Well, I sold them that option for 2 years in the future, and I thought I got a great price coming at the end of it. I still have that house, and the house is worth double what I told them my strike price was. All right, so I'm taking a gamble by selling somebody an option. I'm saying, hey, I think this is what I'm going to be able to get out of it, but I'm giving up the right for future appreciation. Right. So that is something that should give me some compensation that I'll be able to stick in my pocket and not have to worry about. That's the reason why option consideration is not refundable. Right. And so you want to make sure that you realize that when you're doing these, because you don't want to confuse it with something that is refundable, like a deposit, because deposits are refundable. You don't want to call it earnest money because sometimes I've only kept earnest money like once or twice in my life. Most of the time it goes back to the people. Things like that are refundable. Option consideration is not. All right, so I want you to realize it is valuable. It's some sort of value that somebody's giving to you. Maybe cash, may not be. But what option consideration it is not is it's not a down payment. It is not earnest money, and it's not a deposit of any kind. Why did I say that?
Those terms have meaning.
I saying
Those terms have meaning.
those terms have a different meaning, don't they?
In the world.
What's a down payment?
That's the purchase, the lease option. You're right. So,
The down payment has to do with the purchase. What else does that do? Has to do with finance. It has to do with a loan. All right. We're not doing loans here. We're leasing a house and we're giving somebody the opportunity to purchase our house sometime in the future. All right, do not make that the same thing. All right, what about earnest money? What about that? Why is option consideration not considered earnest money? It's not refundable. If y'all ever look, y'all are tars. If y'all look at the guard of the tar, they go through more paperwork trying to make sure that person gets their earnest money back than they do about telling you what you're going to get out of the deal. All right, we're not going to have that here. All right, that is not why this is called that, and it's not a deposit of any kind. All right, we're going to say why that here in just a minute. But going back to buying and selling options, you can both buy options and you can both sell options. You can both have leases and you can enter into leases where you are the renter and you're not the renter and you're the landlord. These are two classes that I highly recommend if you want to get into advanced subjects of this. The first one is through Bill and Kim Cook, and he had Bill teach you the class called The Power of Pure Options that is just absolutely amazing. It'll blow your mind what all you can do and how much money you can make. And so if you have an opportunity to take that class, he had it both as an and-home class, and then you can go down to Tampa, Florida and take it. And then David Tillney right there is one of the guys that taught me about my property management system. He has another class called Master Leasing, where you can take leases and manage other people's properties and make bank off of it too. So check those two things out. I'll take pictures of slides too. I don't mind. Good. Okay. All right. So who is a good candidate for doing a lease option with us? So would you take any renter and just automatically enter into a lease option agreement with them? No, why not?
Yes.
Risk? What kind of risk?
Lunch.
Lunch. Exactly. Lunch. Explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, if someone got trash credit, they would pick out the prior rentals. Why would you want to enter into a financial agreement that they probably.
Good. Why would you enter into a lease agreement with somebody like that?
I wouldn't.
I got it. Okay. All right. So a good candidate for somebody to do a lease option with is a tenant that wants to move into home ownership. These are people that are not just, hey, I'm gonna live in an apartment for the rest of my life and you do everything and I'll just pay you rent each month. These are people that know how to fix houses. These are people that want to be able to make and have their own part of American soil. They want to be able to raise their families here and live here forever and pass this on to the next generation. You want people with a homeowner mentality, not a tenant mentality. You also want people that are almost credit worthy. And oftentimes, whenever I'm doing a lease option with somebody, I'm going to go and have them qualify with my mortgage broker. And they're going to say, okay, Joey, I think if they do this for the next year or so, they're going to be able to get a loan. I'm like, yes, okay, we'll do that. But I don't want somebody that's like, dude, I got no credit, I ain't got nothing. I'm just not going to do it. That doesn't work out. So you want somebody that has a homeowner mentality. You also want somebody that's credit worthy. And people that are already in this situation that are wanting to do, they've been preparing for this whole time. They've been saving up money for a down payment. All right. And we're going to convert that down payment into option consideration. And so it works out both great for us. All right. Now there are two ways to do a lease option. The first way is you lease your house out at above market rents. All right. An example of this would be you got a house. Rents on the house right now, $2,000. Anybody got one of those, by the way? You got a house for $2,000. Okay. So it rents at market rate for $2,000 and you go to lease it out for $3,000. Right? You enter into an agreement where you're going to give them credit for rent, but every month they're going to make $1,000 over what market rate is, and you're going to put that towards their option price. Okay? You're going to do that for 2 years. Now, I like to use 2 years. Has anybody got any idea why? If you're really intrigued,
18 months is too short. If you're really trying to get out, 18 months, you're not enough.
depends on the situation. I've had them close in as little as 6 months. But it just depends. And so I like to give the people time. Because remember, I like win-win deals. I'm not here trying to snooker people. I'm not trying to make more money out of this than what I need to make out of it. I want to see these people succeed. I would not be trying to sell them this house if I didn't think they could do it. Okay. So I'm going to give them 2 years about to be able to do this. And hopefully by then they will have their credit good enough to be able to do it. Now, if they did do that in this situation and they rented it out for 2 years, I'm going to have a sales price of $350,000. I'm going to apply the $1,000 overage each month to their option consideration, and they will have saved up $24,000 by the time this thing's done. So the balance on their purchase will be $326,000. Now, this is not my favorite way to do things. The reason why I'm not a big fan of this is twofold. One, when did you get your option consideration? over time. You didn't get it up front. It was slow, wasn't it? All right. Next thing is, remember, I want to set people up for success. Is their mortgage payment going to be anywhere close to $3,000?
Right now.
Right now, maybe. So maybe, we'll see. But I want them to be, whatever their payment is to me, I want it to be about whatever their mortgage payment is, because I want them to be able to move smoothly into that situation. And actually talk about this with a mortgage broker to find out, hey, what do you think this is gonna be like in order to set them up into that situation? And as of most of the time, market rents is about that. All right, so that's one way to do it. The second way, which is my favorite way, is I'm gonna lease the house out to people at regular rent. All right, so your regular rent, and then I'm gonna get an option consideration up front. I'm gonna get a big lump sum up front that I can go and stick in my pocket. Now, the reason why that is a benefit to me is because, does anybody have any idea when you can use option consideration? When is it yours?
They want it on receipt.
Upon receipt?
Yeah, same.
Same, as soon as you sign the contract, as soon as you go and sell them this right, that is now money you can stick in your pocket. You do that with deposits? What happens with deposits? You gotta keep up with the escrow, right? All right. The other thing that's pretty cool about doing that is you don't get taxed on these. Hey, I missed a slide. What do you do later? Wait, I missed a slide. Where'd it go? My disclaimer, just so y'all know, I am not an attorney. I wanted y'all to know this. I'm not an attorney. I don't have a license to be a realtor. I don't have a CPA's license. The only licenses that I have allow me to drive down the street, be able to go fishing and to carry my firearm. That is the licenses I have. So I just want to make sure we get that before I start telling you about tax stuff. But anyway, option consideration is taxed either at the time that you finish the purchase or at the time the option expires. Right? So that means that you can take that money and stick it in your pocket. Yes, sir. So talk to your CPA though, because remember, I'm not licensed to tell you that. So what?
I hate talking.
Hey, I love mine. Sorry. I've got,
I'm professionally efficient.
well, there's that. You need to go to the proper first system. I'll look you out. You ever heard of that?
I'm huge up.
Proper first for real estate investors?
Yeah.
That's much happening.
Hey, why is it that you don't get taxed up on?
Why is it?
Yeah.
Because you haven't actually done the deal yet. So it's options, it's a future thing. Right now, why they decided that's okay, I don't know, they're not cool with it. All right, so it doesn't go against your income right now.
Well, it's probably really relevant to options in a lot of other,
Mm-hmm.
so. 3 million something wheat or 800 cattle side, something like that.
Probably because they don't know if that goes towards, let's say you get $10,000 in option consideration. They don't know if they're gonna attach that to the $100,000 you're gonna make on a house, or if it's just gonna be the $10,000. So they're allowing you to have time to be able to fulfill that contract, because it's an open contract. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's probably, I've never thought about that. That was a good question. Thank you.
So in the option, it's either done away with, they don't execute on it,
Mm-hmm.
and you tax on it.
Yes, sir. So it's either at the time that the sale is completed, they call that exercising the option, or at the time that it expires, one of the two. All right, so that's my favorite way to do it. And so I've had, I gotta be honest with this. There's not great statistics about these options as far as like what actually happens at the end of it. All right, and I call it a bunch of my friends, I call it a bunch of them asking them, how many have you actually have converted? I've only had one ever that really went out and got a loan and actually closed the auction. All right, only one. And I've been doing lease options since my first one was 2010, 2011. That's when I did my first one. All right. I've had a lot more convert than that because a lot of times what I do is I roll them over into owner financing. And I'm going to show you one of those here in just a little bit. But I use a lease option in order to qualify my people other than just a down payment and make sure we're going to be a long-term relationship. Am I good with that? But either way, with this scenario, you're putting people in a situation where they're going to be able to pay a rent rate that is good enough for them and will be equal to what a mortgage payment would be afterwards. And you get to take the option consideration, stick it in your pocket on day one and walk away with it. All right, so,
For you. So I've seen people combine both 1 and 2 together.
okay, tell me how.
Where you get a consideration up front and then you do a monthly credit on the payment as well.
Okay.
Is that legit or what's your thoughts on it?
So whenever I think about things like this, I am preparing to go to court every single time. All right. I hope for the best and plan for the worst. And all of my paperwork is set up to make sure that when I go in front of a judge, there's no confusion. One of the reasons why I don't like that is because there's a high likelihood that the lease is going to want to mention the option. And if I go in front of a magistrate, we're going to be here for my lease and the lease violations. We're not going to be here for the option. Okay, and so if you're doing rent credits associated with that, there's a high likelihood it says it somewhere over here in the lease, and I don't like that in my personal opinion. Can you do it? Yeah. Is it more likely to blow up on you? I think so. So I would stick away from that. So good question though. But did y'all hear what he said? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So what are the benefits of a lease option? So benefits to the tenant, we'll start there. They get to live in a house while they get qualified to buy it. All right. They're getting to test drive their house. They're moving into home ownership. They know how much their purchase price is going to be. They're going to start out in 2020 at a purchase price for 2020. Then when they get to 2024, be like, I got some equity. And so you're like, dang it, I messed up. It's a gamble. That's why I got money on pocket. All right. So they get a lot of benefits off of that. And it really does help somebody move into home ownership that couldn't do it otherwise. And the other thing that's right now is that there's a lot of competition still on buying houses. All right. And so they get the opportunity to pick their house out, be in it, know they're going to be there, not have it swept out from underneath them unless they screw something up. All right. So that's a big benefit. Benefits to us as landlords. All right. We get a great rent rate. All right. We get market rent rate, and we're going to have a lot lower vacancy rate because they ain't going to move. Because part of what the option says is that if you miss a payment, the option becomes null and void. Okay. So that's a big deal. We get people that are more like homeowners as opposed to tenants. So they're going to take good care of the property and they're going to make sure everything's good. That's going to lower our repair costs. That makes us more money. The next thing that's going to happen is we're going to get us a price that works for us where we know we're going to sell this property sometime in the future. And if you just bought this house and you put it out 2 years from now, you're not going to be in a short-term capital gains. Actually, what it would do. But you're not going to be in a short-term capital gains situation. You're going to be in long-term capital gains, which is awesome. All right. The last thing is that you get to take that option consideration and stick it in your pocket and go spend it however you want to. And you don't get taxed on it until whenever the option either is exercised or expired. It's all question. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Earlier you mentioned that your lease agreement will not mention your option agreement.
Correct.
Your option agreements sound like you think
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I will let you take pictures of the slides. I've got straight up copy and paste verbiage from my options I'm gonna let y'all see. And I didn't give you documents because I don't know if stuff's different in Tennessee. These are things that you want in your documents. So you can put it in there and then figure out what to do from there.
I'm Georgia too.
You're Georgia too? Okay, cool.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So you touched on the short-term capital gains.
Yes, sir.
So if you give them the option to exercise prior to, so let's say you enter into today,
Yes, sir.
and exercise weeks from now.
Yes.
you can sort of-
We totally got it.
How do you know?
I don't.
You kind of don't penalize.
I don't penalize mine.
Is there a way to do that?
Sure you could. You can say, okay, you got to go this year. All right, so if you get out a year, you're good to go.
But if they don't, they can fill that in.
Yeah.
Well, let's say they exercise in 6 months is the way to do that, where it gives them the option to exercise early. And you still cover your.
So let's do this. So what if your option was for 2 years and you say you can't opt, you're not exercised until 12 months of on-time payments has happened?
Right.
You can do that and then that gets you over into long-term capital gains. Okay. So this is something else that's really cool with this is because you're dealing with people, you can sit there and move and make things happen. Peter Fortunato, I don't know who Peter Fortunato is. He got an option on a property one time where there was a lady that was wanting to raise her family in a particular house because of the school district. And she'd gone through a divorce, all kinds of bad things had happened. And so what she said is, I don't want you to exercise this option until after I graduate my daughter. And he's like, fine, I'll do that. And so he bought the option on her, got her the money that she needed to be able to live through this bad situation with the divorce and everything, allowed her to be able to stay in the house until their daughter graduated and then purchase the house. Okay, so that was a benefit to her that made her be like, that's awesome. But it also meant that he got to lock in a price for today when it was many, many years in the future. Do you think his equity increased? Yeah, it did. All right, so that is a great thing to do. So options have the ability to be able to do that for us as investors. We can lock in a price today that in the future may be better off for us, okay? But that is outside the scope of this one. I love these questions. I'm doing great.
Okay, you don't want me to exercise.
Yeah, dude. Like really freeze. Thank you. All right, so whenever you're doing a lease option, what should be in your lease? Anybody got any ideas?
Yeah, it's, length of time that the option agreement would be like 2 years. If the option agreement is 2 years, the lease should probably be 2 years, right?
Are you gonna reference the option? Then?
In the lease. No.
Good job. All right. We don't say jack about the option inside of the lease agreement. All right, so I told that to Shane just a second ago. Whenever you go to magistrate, you are there for your lease agreement, and your lease agreement only. You do not want to confuse the judge. And yes, you can confuse the judge. I did it on accident one time, and I was sorry because whenever he got confused, he ruled with the tenant and not me. I was like, dang it, I threw too much at him. You give him what he needs to know or she needs to know, and that's all you give them. Right? So we're there for our lease and our lease violation, and that is it. Okay. So whenever it comes to what should be in our lease, you're going to have your normal lease. Don't change anything. Well, I say that I have something that I change in mine. Right. So I make sure that when I don't do security deposits, I never do security deposits. Right. That's weird, right? I do something totally different. So security deposits have to be collected. They have to be kept in escrow, and then you got to fight somebody about it or whether or not you get to keep it. Right. That's stupid. I won't do that. Instead, I do something where I sell somebody the right to be able to live in my house for the same rent rate next year. We call that a rent lock. It's about the same price as what a deposit would be. But instead, I'm selling you the right to be able to do that. Okay. If I sell them a right, what do I get to do with the money? I can stay in my pocket, right? Is that an option?
Yes.
It is an option. It's an option to renew next year for the same price. Right. So that's a way that I use them. But whenever I'm doing lease options,
Is it optional?
sir,
Is it optional on part of the tenant? Is it optional on part of the tenant? Can they choose not to
yes, they can.
purchase that rent lock?
Oh, no, that's how I do this.
Not live with that, yeah.
They can choose not to live with me, so what can happen? Okay, so that flat out, and I've never had anybody balk on this because literally, it's a benefit to them. Have rents increased from last year to this year? What about the last 2 years of? All right, so I let them know, you have the first right to be able to live in this house. I'm not gonna kick you out. I'm not gonna rent out from underneath you. You get to live in the house, and this is how much it's gonna be for the next 2 years. Is that a benefit to you? They're like, yes, well, I think that's great. So I'm here. And that's how that works. And so I've never had anybody balk on it because it really is, it is a benefit to them.
Precisely mentioned 2 months rent.
No, I don't do too much, man. It's normally right around 1 month rent.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't, it's normally $50 cheaper is what it is. So the rent block is $50 cheaper than whatever first month's rent is. It's just how I do it. All right. But if I'm doing a lease option, however, I am going to collect a security deposit. Because once again, if I get in front of the magistrate judge, I don't want that tenant to come up and say, hey, look, I paid a bunch of option consideration right here. This was my deposit over here. It just says, well, is it your deposit? No, sir. I did a rent block. What's a rent block? It says right here, no, this is a security deposit. And they take your option consideration and they can give it back to somebody. Right? If I've got a security deposit well documented and I collected it and I have it sitting over here in this account, if they start hollering about it, it's like, okay, well, here's your $500. You can go. Option consideration is mine. I can keep it. So that's the only thing I make different inside of my leases whenever I'm doing the lease option. Okay? Past that, everything's the same. Everything is the same. Changed here, but it didn't change up there. Give us a second. The most important thing to realize though is whenever we're doing a lease option, we are establishing our tenant landlord relationship. And you need to make sure that you do not neglect your tenant landlord relationship regardless. Everything that you're responsible for as a landlord is in place whenever you do this strategy. Just because all of a sudden you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to have this person buy this house from me maybe sometime in the future. Doesn't mean that you don't get to fix the roof. It doesn't mean that you don't get to fix the AC. It doesn't mean that you don't get to fix the water. And I don't care if your option says something otherwise. You still are responsible for it by law. Okay, so make sure you do not neglect that responsibility. All right, common pitfalls that happen with your lease. Do not reference your option inside the lease. Once again, we don't want to get in front of magistrate and all of a sudden they start looking at it and say, hey, I don't understand what this is, and then try to make you get back your option consideration. Do not call the tenant by any other name than tenant. So a lot of times people like to refer to them as tenant buyers because they're trying to make them feel good. If you live in home ownership, let's get tenant buyer. They're in front of the magistrate once, yeah, what do you mean by it? What's going on here? Something else going on. You don't want to confuse the magistrate. And then once again, make sure you get a security deposit. All right. What should be in your options? Now, this is the part where we're going to get into nitty gritty stuff. Get your cameras out because you don't want to take pictures of. All right. Whenever you first start out at the top, you need to define who the parties are. We've got optionees. We've got optionors. Can anybody tell me what an optionee is without looking at the board? Everybody look down. Optionee is the person that gets the keys. That is the person that is buying the option. Optionor is the person that owns the door. That's the person that is selling the option. Remember that. Okay. An option agreement has to have a start date, and it also has to have an end date. We call that end date the date that it either expires or the date that it has to be exercised is what we call that. Okay. It needs to have the address of the property if you're doing property, which we are. And the next two statements up here are verbatim out of one of the leases that are one of the options that I did in 2020. So we're going to read it straight up. It says the optionor, in consideration for the optionee being in faithful compliance with all terms and conditions of that certain residential lease agreement dated April 30th, 2020. This is paragraph 2. The first paragraph says who the optionee and the optionor are. Very first paragraph, I'm saying, hey, as consideration for you being able to have this option, you have to be doing what you're supposed to with my lease. All right, that's part of the consideration. If they don't do that, this thing becomes null and void. All right, so we are going to talk about our lease a whole lot in the option agreement, but not in the lease agreement. Does that make sense? Why do we want to do that?
Magistrate Court, good for county.
This don't have anything to do with magistrate right now. What this has to do with is that they are not fulfilling their obligations, their promises on my lease. They have no business buying my house. Okay, and so we're gonna have that conversation. If you're not in compliance with that, if you're not doing what you promised on my house, you don't get to have it. And so it goes away if you go away. That's the answer to that one. Okay? All right, then it's between Focus Property Solutions, that's my company, and Zachary and Hannah. Those were some tenants that I still have. And being paid a non-refundable option consideration fee of $2,500. Now, that might sound like a small amount. It truly was. This one has a family story associated with it, not my family. I bought this house from their Nana, and Hannah was raised in this house. And I bought the house from Nana subject to. And so Nana called me up and said, man, Hannah really wants to live in that house. She wants to raise her babies in that house. This is all the money they have. Can you do this? And I was like, yeah, because I mean, like, she wasn't even behind. She wasn't behind. She just needed to get out of it because she had the house lease option to somebody else, and they were counting the rent payment that was coming in, which was equal to her mortgage payment as income to her, and it was screwing up her assisted living facility. And so she had to get it out of her name. That's how we did it. So anyway, that's a
How much did Nana clear? The title something.
Sir?
How much did Nana clear when you put the title something?
zero. I had to make it at 0 for her. That was the benefit. And so the trade-off was is that I gave Hannah the option to be able to buy this place. Now, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but I said tenants in mind. They didn't exercise.
That's
They,
what I was saying, it says 2022, so you didn't.
they did not. Okay, so it turns out Hannah and Zach were better tenants than they were owners. The reason is because they can't afford to fix houses when they break. Okay, and so that's what happens. So I got to put $2,500 in my pocket. And then when we did taxes for 2022, my TPA Kelly said, guess what? We got to add extra $2,500 for your thing. I was like, okay, we'll do. All right. So anyway, that was good and valuable consideration was both the non-refundable option consideration and they have to be in compliance with it. The next thing is the term of this option agreement is from April 30th, 2020 all the way until May 2022. That's 2 years. All right. 2 years is the magic number with it because that allows people time to be able, if they were going to go get a loan, to be able to fix anything they need to get it. And even if they mess up, they can fix it again. Does that make sense? So a lot of times they can fix credit in like 6 to 8 months, supposedly. But if they mess up or they have a car breakdown, they got to get some more debt or something along those lines, then they can do that. All right. What's the date of this, by the way? April 20th. What happened in April 20th? They shut everything down, dude. They shut it down. Well, no, so that is something that is a benefit that I forgot. If y'all got anything that you can lease option right now is a wonderful time to be able to do that because everybody's got tax refunds coming back and they want to put money to work. And so they can put money to work as an option consideration. you can get better rents and you'll get that lump sum of money you're talking. So that is a great thing to do.
You put deed book and page, it's in property address, may not be.
I actually attach a legal description to it. Yes, sir. Oh, by the way. Do we record option agreements at the courthouse?
Depends.
What?
No,
He said some of my teachers.
Yeah.
No, why not?
Probably.
This ain't nobody's business. All right? The other side of it is if I'm buying an option, I'm gonna get it recorded. The reason is because I don't want somebody to come along and say, hey, guess what? You don't have the right to buy my house because you got this in 2020 and now property values are double what they are. I don't want to do that. So you sold me the right. It's my right. I can buy it for that price. We agree to that. Okay, so if I'm buying one, it gets recorded. If I'm selling one, it does not get recorded. Just so you know.
How transferable are these? Do you limit your?
Mine are not transferable. I do not allow them to get assigned it. I have it specifically in there and it's not on this page, it's the next page.
And if it's not specified that it is.
There's an argument for it. I guess there's an argument for it. That's why it's better to be,
Right. Be clear.
yeah. And so I don't like to do things that are, I'll get out of the way. Oh, I don't like to do things that are gray anyway. I want it to be straight up. If I want to have the right to be able to sign it, I've got it in there. So like for instance, when I do a master lease, my master lease with the landlord says I have the right to be able to sublease the property. All right, but then my end user lease says you do not have the right to be able to sublease control. I want control, but I also want to be transparent so everybody knows what's going on because most of the time people go to court because they're pissed off because they didn't understand.
Sure.
And I don't want to be in court. I just don't want to do it. And so I've had to be in court before. And sometimes I win, sometimes I don't, even when I knew I was right. I've always been right every single time. I've not done anything shady. My wife would not say that now. But at least when it came to what we were doing in court, I like to do things right. I don't want to do shady stuff. All right, so this one is the next segment of this. This has to do with what the actual sales is. It says terms and conditions of the purchase price. If you'll notice again, provided the resident / optionee is in full compliance with all terms and conditions of my lease, referenced in section 1, then it shall be as follows, right? If you're not doing what you're supposed to on my property, you don't get to have the house. Straight up stated, that's my strike price on that, 110. Oh, the house is worth 200,000 right now, so I'm glad this didn't go happen. But either way, if I had, I would have let it happen. Right? It was a good deal for me then. It would still been a good deal for me now. Right? If the optionee purchases the property, the term shall be all cash. This sounds a whole lot like purchase and sale agreement stuff, doesn't it? The optionee, if their option may obtain a mortgage, this can be done provided the optionee pays for all closing costs. I'm not planning for any closing costs associated with this at all. You got to take care of this if you want to move into home ownership. Now, Hannah was special in this situation, and I got this from Anna. She wanted me to be able to put her in this. She had no problem doing anything that we did, and I wanted to make sure that this was done right. And so one of the things that I was willing to do was that I was willing to own and finance this house to Hannah and Zach if they did everything they were supposed to. So what I did next in section C is I said, or if I decide then I can take back an equity note for this, and here are the terms of what that would be. I like to use examples in my options, once again, for transparency, so people understand, because we're real estate investors. We speak a different language than most people do. Even the option E and option 4 is kind of like, whenever we're doing it, you know? But if I can sit there and say, okay, if you do what you're supposed to, and you make 24 months of on-time payments, and we're cool with that, then I'll sell you this house for $110,000 at a fixed rate of 6.5%. By the way, in 2020, with 6.5% a great rate.
Yes, of course.
Gosh, man, I had no idea this was gonna happen. All right? For 30 years. So I got a 30-year fix, 6.5% at 110. All right. And then payments would be that. Now that was just PI, that's my TI. This can be done provided that the optionee pays for all closing costs. Once again, they have to be able to pay for all the closing costs. And then the final paragraph says, all the optionees non-refundable option consideration fee will be applied towards the purchase price. All right, assuming they do everything they're supposed to. If optionee does not exercise option to purchase, the optionee forfeits all that money. All right, that is something that you want in there because once again, we don't want any gray area here. If this being a deposit that's returnable, it comes to me and it stays with me forever. Amen. I'm on it.
I'll say, Joe,
Yes, sir.
I want to ask about the underlying mortgage on this, even though I know it's not strictly relevant.
Sure.
But the fact that you were offering to take back a note suggests to me a powerful equity position with the note.
Sure.
Am I right?
Sure.
What was the mortgage at?
I have no idea.
When you took it over, what was the balance on the mortgage? Okay.
4 years ago, too big.
We're talking $20,000 for probably $80,000.
No, it was actually a fairly new note, if I remember correctly. It was like 3.2% interest rate, 30-year fix. It's with, Mr. Cooper now, I know that. I'll say something like that. And so, to me, with doing under financing, by the way, this is a mobile home on land. This is a double wide on land. Okay, and
So
so
the fix,
it's, yeah.
yeah, not, it's been certified.
Permanent
foundation.
So I don't know if it is or isn't, and the reason why I don't know if it is or isn't is because I don't remember off the top of my head whenever we did it for. It can be, it cannot be. And so either way, it doesn't matter in this particular situation. This was financed, so one would think that it was probably fixed because you don't get ones that are not fixed, financed through FHA. But this one was financed through FHA and it wasn't that over the loan. So more than likely it was. But anyway, so what was interesting about this formula though was, is even though there wasn't a huge spread of $40,000, something like that, in my different prices, right? So, underlying balance, let's say it was 60,000 and then we have 110, it's 50,000.
The interest rate down.
The interest rate's huge, right? I just doubled the interest rate at that point in time. And so that was amazing. And so, but it also was an affordable thing for them. That was the other side. And so this was a win-win deal for us on
But your PI on the mortgage is refundable.
You're asking the police. I wish, hey, I tell you what, send me an email. I'll find out for you. That way you can see, because that is interesting. I don't know. It was good enough for me, whatever it was.
That's the beauty of the arrangements is that I think it's you reference this, so I think it's really cool. If it was good enough in 2020,
Yes, it still is.
you can honor, both parties can honor their commitments.
Mhm.
And the perceived equity is funny money.
Yeah.
But it's still a good deal.
It's still good. That's what it is. All right. So like I said, I don't have a prepayment penalty on mine. They can pay me off at any time and I don't care about that. Matter of fact, the sooner the better, as long as I am getting long-term capital gains. All right. There's another part, not delinquent. In order for the optionee to exercise their option, they cannot be in default of the residential lease contract. That's 3 times we've said this so far. You know, it must be current on all rent payments owed to me. So I'm not gonna allow them to like skip a payment. They have to be paying me this entire time. Otherwise, we don't sell them the house. It's not assignable. I've done this deal with Hannah. I'm not doing it with anybody else. Okay, but it was Act 2, but I'm doing this deal with them. They can't go and sign this off with somebody else. And then null and void. If a rental payment is not received by the rental payment due date, the optioner may declare the option to purchase real estate null and void without notice. Notice that I put in there May. All right, I don't have to do this. If they have a legitimate reason, if they contact me about something, if the bank shut down because we're in the middle of COVID and crazy stuff is happening, I may still honor this. If they're just trying to like be shady and run around and not do what they're supposed to, I'm not gonna do that. So I still have the option to be able to make this whole thing go away if they're not in full compliance of my lease. All right, so that was that. Those are some of the main things that you need to have in your option agreement whenever you're doing it. Yes, sir.
I've seen some people put in their option agreement that if the tenant doesn't make repairs on the property, then the option becomes null and void.
Okay, so that is a great question. It depends on what you're doing there. All right, so I actually, how much time do we got? We ain't gonna get into the 101 people. We will get into the bad one. I've got a handyman option that I have in here. All right, brief overview. House was a junker. I mean, like a straight up junker. And I had put 2 different people into that house that were owner financing it from it. And they were not fixing the house up. They were moving into the junker as it was. So the third time around, I said, you know what? I'm gonna lease option it to you. You have to make the house better before you can move into it. Then we're gonna do it for another 6 months to prove that y'all are gonna pay on time. Then we'll roll it over and over financing. Right, so that was a little bit different situation. But you can't just require people to do all the repairs on the house because that's outside the landlord-tenant responsibilities.
Well, I'm thinking in the lease agreement, you make repairs, but if you're just forced to make repairs for them, that could be a reason to null the.
So on my, yeah, it could be, all right, so depending on what your lease says, so in my lease, we make them do the first $50 of repairs each month, all right? And I always say, what can you do for $50? Not much. The whole point is that they're keeping their eyes on it and looking at what needs to be done, all right? And so in my option agreement, it also said the amount of repairs each month cannot exceed $50 a month. It's my responsibility, I'm the landlord. Okay, because the last thing we want to do is, once again, get in front of the magistrate. Judge, he made me put a roof on my house, you know it, guys, okay? All right, common pitfalls. Calling the option a consideration the wrong thing. Is it a deposit? No. Is it a down payment? Is it earnest money? I don't know what else it could be, but it is not. It is something that is paid directly to me because I just sold the right. All right. Another common common pitfall is trying to make these two documents. Can anybody tell me why we ought to have, I mean, make it one document? Can anybody tell me why it needs to be two documents? Instead of a bunch. I don't want them seeing the option. If we're in front of the magistrate, here's my lease. You understand leases. It doesn't need to be both. Okay, you need to have two documents.
What if they bring up the option?
Your Honor, we're not here for that. What's happened is that they have failed inside the lease right here. This is what they did to fall in the fall, and that's what we're here for. Yes, sir. He might ask me a couple more questions, but the whole redirect is, Your Honor, that's not what we're here for. They were in violation of this, and that's the conviction based off of. Good question. All right. Next thing is requiring the tenant to make all repairs. You are in a tenant landlord relationship. They cannot do all the repairs. Requiring the tenant to pay taxes and insurance. That's bad, y'all. If they do that long enough, all of a sudden they wind up being in an equitable position called adverse possession. All right. If they do that for 7 years, they have interest in the property. All of a sudden they're part owner. You don't want to do that. All right. Next thing that's common pitfall is neglecting your duties as a landlord. And then the last thing that is huge is disguising your lease option as an installment sale. All right, we're going to read an example real quick.
We're talking about, not requiring them to pay taxes and insurance. You know, I'm not sure you can, that we should send the, and this is that law.
I believe it is law, but don't hold me to that. Once again, I'm not an attorney. I might be shooting an attorney, but. All right, so the reason why we don't do that, we're going to read an example here in just a second where somebody flat out wrote an installment sell out and they typed the name of it, lease option up above. All right, is anybody familiar with the term substance over form? Substance over form. You are? You want to explain it? Most of the time that has to do with finances where people are trying to hide what they're doing and make it look one way when they're really doing something else. For instance, you could sell your inventory over to the bank and then lease it back to them in order to lower what your tax burden is going to be. All right, the substance over form, when you look at that, is the form was, hey, you leased it back. The real substance is you kept your inventory. All right. Same thing we're going to see with this is that the form was, hey, it's a lease option. But when you really read the document, the substance is this was an installment sale. Why do we not want to do an installment sale for this? You may want to do an installment sale, but why are installment sales different than doing lease options?
So you evict partial owner, so
So we're talking,
you can't evict.
you can't evict, you're not a partial owner, they are the owner. All right, so if you're doing an installment sale, they are the owner. You don't evict people. It's not a magistrate situation. Instead, at least in Georgia, and I believe it's this way in Tennessee too, if you are doing an installment sale, you can't even foreclose. You have to do something called a judicial foreclosure, which is held by the Superior Court. You can go and file a lawsuit, get in front of a jury, hire an attorney, get up there and fight your case and hope that your guy can argue better than the other guy. I don't like that. I don't like not being in control of my properties. And so you want to make sure that you stay in a landlord-tenant relationship because that's what a lease option is. Which you're renting the property and you're giving them the opportunity to purchase it later on. You're not selling to it over time. All right, show me how to get back over to that. Okay. And make it bigger. Let me see. All right, so this is a real deal that came across my desk last week, and I was like, I'm teaching on lease options. What am I talking about? This came across. Yes. So this is an example of what not to do. All right. The first paragraph is like it normally is. It defines the parties. Who are the parties up there? What's it say? Landlord, seller. What? Landlord and seller? And then we got a tenant what? Purchaser. Is this a lease or is this a sale?
Yep.
Uh-huh. All right. I want y'all to remember something too. Whenever we started this out, I said, always make sure that the compensation you're receiving each month is called what? Rent. Okay. So landlord, in consideration of the mutual cut, we don't care about that. All right. That's just normal mumbo jumbo stuff that, hey, we're going to be selling this property over here at Cherokee Lane. The purchase price of this property shall be $108,000 payable as follows. $5,000 as earnest money. Okay. On the date of the execution of this agreement by check to the landlord, the balance of the purchase price shall be paid monthly as set out in paragraph 3 below. What did that just say?
Paid in installments.
On what? On that entire purchase price right there. Is this a lease? No. Installments. What does the word installment mean? Oh, monthly. I'm sorry. It shall be paid monthly, set forth as below. It's an installment sale. They're owner financing this house, and up at the top, scroll back down, please.
Go back up.
Yeah. The very top of this thing says this: agreement for lease and option to purchase real estate. All right. Just because they put that in there doesn't mean anything. Scroll down to number 3, please. All right, the tenant purchaser agrees to pay the balance of $103,000 in monthly payments in the amount of $1143.51, with the first payment due on there. The scheduled payment shall continue on the first of each month for a period of 10 years until paid in full. That's an installment sale, straight up. All right, they got a late payment. Okay, that's cool. If the tenant purchaser fails to pay the monthly payments in full for more than 2 months, landlord will commence eviction proceeding on the 5th day following the 2nd month of non-payment. All right, can they do that? Why not? Y'all, there are a lot of people that have erroneous documents whenever they can do this. And they're like, man, I win every time when I go to court. Here's the reality. Most people, most tenants don't show up at magistrate court. And if they don't show up at magistrate court, you win. All right. So you can win a bunch. I didn't get contacted by the investor on this. I got contacted by the tenant on this because they were friends and they were like, hey, Joey, what can we do with this? How can we push this? So the long and the short of it was they missed a payment in October. He's a Hispanic guy. He's a contractor. And he was over there and times got tough. And it's October. He got to November and he's like, I got the money. I'll pay it back up. Notice that his document said 2 payments. The investor was like, that was in 2020. It's now 2023. The house worth a whole lot more. Oh, I ain't doing that. We're going to evict. What are you talking about? We're going to evict. We got 10 years. We're going to evict. And so he took him to eviction court. Well, my friend actually had the gumption to be able to go and hire an attorney. The attorney went and took one look at this document and said, this ain't no lease option. It's an installment sale. And he had very, very little trouble going over to the magistrate judge. This is in Murray County, by the way. This is in Georgia. It happened in October 2023. This isn't like a whole thing. He went over to the judge and said, look at this, judge. This is not a lease agreement. There's no rent mentioned here whatsoever. There's no covenants associated with landlord-tenant relationship. This is a purchase document. The judge looked at it and he said, I cannot evict based off of this. If y'all want to continue this, then we're going to have to appeal back to Superior Court. Investor lost. Rightfully so. He didn't have his document set up correctly. All right. So all these people that go around that have bad documents, they talk about, I win every time, I win every time. They haven't been tried yet. Don't do stupid stuff with this. Set it up right. You are in a tenant-landlord relationship, and then you're going to give this person the right to be able to purchase the house sometime in the future. Don't muddle the two like this is done. All right. Right now, the investor has decided that he will refuse payments from my friend, and that's been since October of last year. They're still trying to figure out what to do because they want to be able to just like pay this guy, make him go away so they can have their house, because they're like, hey, this is what we were doing. We still don't know what's going to happen with it, but the guy don't want to go to Superior Court. He's already said, I don't want to go to Superior Court, because if he goes to Superior Court, he's going to lose. The other side of it is then after they go through Superior Court for the faulty eviction, it's then going to become another lawsuit, but then they'll have to sue for the judicial foreclosure. And so then he's going to have to hire another attorney, get up there and try to be able to prove that what he was doing was wrong, right? And make the jury be able to see that. Don't do that. Right? If you set it up correctly, if you do a lease, you're sure enough that you lease, and they default on that, you can evict. All right. The option is something totally different, has nothing to do with circumstance. Make it 2 different documents. I don't think there's really anything else to read off of that. Really, 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 truly. So, come back to PowerPoint. Cool. So anyway, at the end of the day, the form of this said lease option agreement up top. But the substance of it was nothing more than an installment sale. Don't do that because I got an example of you losing it, and it just did, all right? You don't want to lose it. Plus, it was actually $15,000. It wasn't $5,000. You did it written out correctly. He's got records of it. They gave you $15,000. This comes back and they're like, dude, no, you're gonna have to give him all that $15,000 back. That's not a good situation for the investor. Okay? Anyway, did y'all know that about does anybody know the difference between a judicial foreclosure and a non-judicial foreclosure?
And then on the courthouse steps versus having to go through.
All right, what makes that happen? All right, so a non-judicial foreclosure is what normal foreclosures are. That's whenever you've either got a security deed in place or you've got a deed in trust in place. And inside the deed of trust or inside the security deed, it says in there, if you miss a payment, if we go through all this and we notify you, we have the right to be able to foreclose on you. You go ahead and give that right as the borrower over to the lender. Right, and so then they go through the normal process. Apparently it takes about 45 days in Tennessee. And ours, we have to advertise 4 weeks prior to the first Tuesday of every month. So it's a little bit different, but either way, it's cut, it's dry, you go over, it's done. All right. A judicial foreclosure, on the other hand, you have to hire an attorney. You have to go and you have to file a lawsuit. Then you have to go over and prepare and get in front of a jury and hope that they see your side of it. Which one's easier? Non-judicial. All right. If you're going to sell with owner finance, just go ahead and sell with owner financing. It's not that hard. Matter of fact, it's about the same amount of paperwork involved. Just go ahead and sell with owner financing. Do not try to sit there and disguise it as an installment sale with a lease option because it's going to bite you in the butt. All right. On the short of it, make sure you do these things. Never call option consideration a down payment because, oh, there was something in that thing that I forgot to tell you. Inside of that agreement, it referenced the amortization schedule. All right, what is an amortization schedule? It's how your payments will be applied towards principal and interest. It is the pay down of a loan over time. All right, that has nothing to do with the lease. So make sure you don't ever call your option consideration down payment because we don't want to think there's any kind of loan there. Next thing is, don't give somebody an amortization schedule because once again, there is no loan here. This is a lease and an option to be able to purchase it sometime in the future. Number 3, always refer to monthly payments as rent. Make sure everything says as rent. If they got to fix anything else up, that's additional rent. All right. Only require normal tenant care of the property. Don't get them out there trying to make them do things that are beyond the tenant landlord relationship. And then realize you are in a tenant landlord relationship and act in accordance with it. All right. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Mention that most of the time they don't exercise the right. Have you also have examples where you didn't allow them to because they have violations of
Sure. Awesome.
So then I call the question that must rely on you being period. So like I know you do our clients documenting how you as a individual landlord, how to make sure that you're keeping yourself well documented so you can defend yourself.
Okay. This is not hard for me whatsoever. So inside the option agreement, it says that if you miss a payment, then I have the right, I've made at my option, to declare this thing null and void. Every time we send a pay or quit to somebody, it goes in their file and it sits there and it shows wherever it got some note there too. And so if they got to pay or quit, I can call that null and void. And they've got no leg to stand up. So it's really is. It's all in my Dropbox tree. Whenever we send a pay or quit, it's sitting over there. You'll call some different. Okay, letter of demand, pay or quit, same thing. Good question though. Do y'all understand what she asked? So if I have done a lease option with somebody and it did not convert, and the reason why it didn't get exercised was because they made a late payment or they decided, hey, they were gonna bring Pitfalls over to my house when they know they're not supposed to, or you know what? They decided they didn't want to do it. Now that happened before too, and they left. How do I document that? And it's really easy. I mean, it's simple documentation. What she was talking about, I use a late payment as an example. We keep every pay or quit we send anybody. And that is a letter of demand saying, hey, you've got this amount of time to either pay up or quit. If we file eviction, I'm sorry. I really am. If somebody does have a late payment and it was for a good reason, we'll work with them. If we go and we have to file eviction, it's done. That deal. Even if They try to make it right. I had to file eviction on somebody, it's done. By the way, eviction's a whole lot easier in Georgia than it is in Tennessee, apparently, because I heard it can take like 10 weeks, and the longest one I've ever had was 60 days, with most of them taking 3 weeks or less. And so,
I think counties.
Randall County. All right, what other questions we got?
Would you say your general strategy, or one strategy, if you want to do a long-term situation, would be the lease option for 2 years and then convert it to a true non-finance?
That's what I do. All right, so I've got a bunch of those. I've got a bunch of those. Most all of them that have converted have been through that. I'll go and I'll owner financing. And the whole reason that I'm using the lease option strategy is, one, to get outside of short-term capital gains. And then the other thing is I want to establish a good payment history. I want to be able to make sure if I'm going to be with these people for a long time, they're going to do what they say they're going to do. Taking the first person that's got money and falls up the glass, it doesn't work out very good. I'm going to be with you for a long time, and I want to make sure that works out. That's a good question. Yes, ma'am.
Do you do a lot of purchases with these options too, or just sold? And
So that's a great question. I have done some, most of the time, I play a lot of stuff. And so I have used these options to be able to purchase properties before. I haven't done it real lately. And so it was more of a starter thing for me. Oh, it's a great thing. I mean, it will come back into play for us when we get there. So you can use a lease to be able to manage people's properties. Are you aware of that? Okay, they call that a master lease. And so, like I said, I'm not an agent. And in order to be able to manage other people's property, you have to be a licensed agent in Georgia and I believe Tennessee also, right? But I have come across many tired landlords that aren't in a position to either fix up the house to get it ready to be able to rent, or I had one guy, he was going over to Kuwait, he was in the army, and he had like 2 weeks to find somebody, he needed somebody he could trust. And he contacted me, he was like, look, I need a brother. And I was like, I'll treat it like it's my house. And I did. And so I leased his house out for a lower payment than what rent rates were. I think I made like $350 a month off of it. And then I did have the option to be able to purchase it at the end of it. I did not exercise that option. He wanted to sell it to his brother, and I wasn't going to get in the way of that because I enjoy being able to have family ties. And so they did that together. But either way, that is a way that you can control property as an investor, where you can. I didn't have to come up with any money. I had to fix it. I had to clean up the house a little bit and get it fixed up. He only had like 2 weeks before he was out in Kuwait. And I asked him, I was like, are you going to like a bad area? And he said, well, I'm getting hazard pay if that tells you anything. And so I don't know. And I got to talk to him a couple of times. It was weird times, but either way, that's where he was going. But that was a way to be able to control property, be able to get rental income off of it for me. And then if I had been able, if I wanted to exercise my option, I could put somebody in the house, made their purchase price bigger than my purchase price, got hired, got rent, and then a purchase price at the end, plus got option consideration. We call that sandwich lease option. That was like, so don't worry about that.
Could you have done that if the property wasn't vacant and was already occupied?
Sure.
You could have
You could-
master lease and already the property copy.
So what would have to happen is that the owner would have to assign you the lease. But the cleaner way to do it is to be like, hey, we're gonna be switching property management companies. You're now gonna be with Ashley, and so we need you to redo our documents. That's the easiest way to do it. And most of the time, I've stepped into those a bunch of times where we've bought houses and they had tenants in place. By the way, I've only had like 2 of those ever stay because I've got different standards than other people do. But still, we come over and we sit down with them like, hey, things are changing. I just want to introduce yourself. We're gonna have a good relationship, but this is what we expect, and we're gonna be renewing the lease. And they're like, okay, because most people are like, okay, that helps me. That's going to keep me in place. They're like, my payment going to stay the same. I'm just the same. You know, is this, that, and the other? All the same. But the difference is you're going to actually have access to us as opposed to that other lady that was trying to cut it. I'm like, woohoo. True story. All right, what else?
How do you typically determine the amount for consideration?
Great question. I don't have a good answer for that. So something that we've always said is that it's negotiable as long as it's reasonable. What do you have to offer? And I have seen people do 10%, you know, and 10% of whatever the purchase price is, and that works out good. By leaving it open-ended like that, sometimes you get some funny things. Sometimes people got a lot more than what they would thought, and then sometimes it's like, hey, I don't have that much, but I've got this other property that we're trying to get rid of, and you know, we could work out something with that. And so that's just how I do it personally. But Just coming up with a percentage is a good way to do it too.
What have you received the consideration that wasn't cash?
Yeah, pontoon boat one time.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I almost got the pontoon boat. That's right. She got rid of it. But no, I was excited about getting a pontoon boat. We have had other properties get tied up in it. That's been mostly, I really wish we got that pontoon boat. That'd been fun. Okay.
If you have released the property, you want to have another option. We tell them, say, okay, say, both of them, release the option.
Say it one more time. I don't understand.
For the both, you said both of them.
Okay. Y'all hear what she just said?
No.
One way to be able to gain control over a property and for a tired landlord, actually, this would be good for you if you want to do this, is that.
I'm not tired.
You're not tired?
I'm not tired.
I'm talking about you find it. I know you're not tired. I know that's it. But, hey, oh, that actually got me a paddleboard for a I see you paddleboarding all the time. I'm excited about it. What I just say, dude. Okay, so, one of the things that you can do as an option consideration for somebody that was a tired landlord is that you can prepay a lease. Right, you're gonna be paying it anyway, but it's valuable to them because they got their money in their pocket right now. I actually, monthly, you just paid it all up front. I have done that. It's not taxable to them, so that's exciting for them.
That's not like a prepaid or anything, it's actually.
I figured they only get option consideration instead of prepaid rate.
Yeah.
So, I've actually done something similar to that with owner finance deals that I am buying. And so I'll say, hey, do you want a, down payment of X? Well, how about this? What if I just prepay you what my note payment's gonna be for the next 5 years? And then, we'll start making annual payments after that. And what that allows me to be able to do is get my money back before I start making payments. That's what I did. All right, anything else? Y'all, we went over a whole bunch of stuff today. I really appreciate y'all being out here today. If y'all have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I've got my phone number right there. That's my blog. That's my personal email address to me. I am accessible. That being said, I've got a 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 4-year-old in May, and then I've got a 19-month-old and then a beautiful wife. And so if I don't answer the phone, it's not because I'm screening your call, it's because I'm legitimately busy. Okay, so leave me a message. I will call you back. Okay.